washing the card.
Yeah, it's clean. Oh yeah, with the coaster too.
All right, blue light.
Hey there, and welcome to our live broadcast. Phil Ratcliff, Tony Jones. We are kind of doing the duo of showing you guys some neat basic things in financial planning that can have huge practical implications on your future. Sorry we're a little bit late, as always. Technology doesn't always cooperate, but hopefully you're getting a great stream so that you can watch this and learn a little bit. So we're going to let Tony kind of kick it off here. Starting out with something that's basic to almost everyone.
Yeah. So the basic part is that when you have a lot of time, we're going to talk about a young couple today. The last name's Young, and the consequences of not optimizing your investments over the long term. Well, the markets might return this much. The average person will return this much, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And that really, we're not meant to handle the emotion and the mental part of investing. And so often people are going to fail the markets by 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6%. And now is very good timing because I look at the clients that we took over a year ago, and they themselves had a very good 2017. They came over to us, and the markets just haven't been that great. But we've got a great plan in place. You know, the markets never do the average return. They're always up and they're always down. And so it's not uncommon that these folks that have been with us for a year now want to change in what they're doing.
Yeah, and a good investment strategy is something that you have a strategy that's proactive. So you've already done what you're supposed to do. You shouldn't be reacting to the markets.
And so putting them in a good position. So let me just show you from a simple calculator. And by the way, so if you just go to news and events on a financial education on our website, you will see calculators. Okay, so here's one that we're looking at. We're starting now. I just want to show you the consequence of doing what the average investor does compared to what is potential with the markets over the long term. So we're putting in $50,000, one lump sum, and we're going to do this for a 30-year period. Actually, I want to start at 4% to show. So
that's the average investor rate of return the last 40 to 50 years has been 4%.
4%. So you hear a lot better, but people really make common mistakes. So what this is going to look like is your 50,000 is going to turn into 162,000 over 30 years. Really sounds good when you just look at it as a whole, but really it has big consequences if you're not doing what the markets are doing. So we're even just going to use 8%. In many cases we could do better than that, but we'll say that. So instead of 162,000 at 4%, you would now have instead 503,000 at the end of the 30-year period. All right, so that, I just want to show you that compounding and what it can do, because folks don't realize how important it is. Yes, as you get older, you can try to catch up, but if you just get an early start on things, it really goes a long way.
Yeah, that's 3 times more money. That's not saving anything extra. You can see the principal base is still that same 50,000. The whole rest of that pie chart, green getting bigger, it's just the growth. And that extra, 3 to 4% interest difference between what investors could get after costs, kind of with a moderately aggressive portfolio, versus what they have gotten, it's almost 3 times more money after 30 years. I mean, that's huge.
It's significant. So now what I want to show you is we have built out for John and Joanna here a basic plan. And so when we build out, when I say basic, is a lot of work goes into this, but we take everything in their financial life into consideration. What they're making, what they're spending, what the future is going to look like,
where it comes from, taxes. They've got 2 young kids into there. It's projecting college. It's projecting college savings. It's projecting their retirement, their FICA taxes, Social Security kicking in. So we say that this is the base plan, but there, like Tony said, there's a lot of work. It's a lot more complicated than the graph. But that's the point of what we try to do as financial advisors, is help break it down for people simply, so that they can understand it, even though your life is probably pretty complicated.
Yeah, and the earlier you get a start on these things, the more chance you have to really get ahead. So here's we looked at the basic, slope up in income they're saving, but then we have some college, so we got some financial
dips
spending
down when they're
right
helping
there.
to pay,
And that's really pretty normal, because really what we see here is probably 529s going down in other savings accounts.
Yeah, 529s at first, and then them having to spend out of other things eventually.
Right, exactly. So we would do that in the most efficient way. And then here comes retirement. In the normal course of things, they get just below $1 million, making the average returns. And then of course we have, projected that at the age of 92 and 91, they're going to run out of money. But what if they made good decisions and worked either with financial professionals who know what they're doing, or they themselves were able to eliminate mistakes in investing and optimize the market? This is how different it would look like. So good, we're in present value here.
So all this is changing is rate of return.
That's all we're doing, going from the average to what you could optimize from the markets. And so that's what this is showing. And what a huge difference, right? I mean, look at how comfortable they're going to be and how much money they're going to have at the end of their life. It's a big difference. And so what we do for folks, of course we want everybody to be comfortable in how they're investing, because if they're not, they may inherently want to make changes because we didn't do things right for them at the beginning. And so one of the things we do, and here's an example, we use Riskalyze. And we just took a look at one of them. They scored a 39 out of 100. The other one scored a 64. So this is more of the low end of moderate aggressive. And you can see the change, or the difference in the mixtures, 41% stock here, 68 here. But look at the difference in return. This is right about average, what people do when they're not optimizing the stock market versus what the potential is. And that's right about the examples I was showing you, and how much more, just by doing these changes and getting to know people, we could really have a major impact.
Absolutely. I mean, this is actually how their portfolio is, and it's very a similar thing that we see from a lot of people that come in, that they have a lot of cash here. They think that they're diversified in terms of, I've got some in bonds, I've got some in stocks, and you can kind of see it's for how they test it out at 61. That is well below their risk tolerance, and it's very inefficient unless they have some huge expense that they've got coming up that they need to use that cash for. And this is a significant underperformance, and that's without making any bad decisions to sell low or buy high, which a lot of people have done historically, to want to jump on the bandwagon of the tech boom, or get really scared through the 2008 and 9 crisis and kind of jump out and then not get back in for a couple years because the press was talking about double dip recession. That's without any underperformance from that, and you can see that's still 4%. So it's very common for people in behavior for us to do something called attribution error. And basically what that says is it's the basis of the very practical thing you've probably seen, where people will ask if people are better than the average driver, right? And it's like over 90% of people will say that they're better than the average driver, which is not possible. And it's kind of the same thing on the investments. If you're watching this and you're interested in it, then already you're ahead of the game. But inside your mind, you're saying those people that underperform in their investments, that's not me.
Right.
I'm better than that average. And so there are multiple things that contribute to this, and don't get stuck on that, because most of the wealth in this nation is concentrated in the top, and the average education of that's pretty high. So these are not stupid people making dumb decisions. It's people who evolution has basically optimized to make higher probability survival decisions that do not work well for very rational investment and saving decisions. And that is where a lot of that comes from. So we're going to show you a couple more things. So we introduced you to the massive investment underperformance. Now we're going to show you a couple other scenarios real quick that basically show you, let me turn these all off. They show you when we're looking at this, and we're going to leave the rate of return on higher here, okay? So this is the base that Tony was just showing you with the optimized rate of return. And what we're going to do here now is basically show you this scenario. This couple, the husband had private student loans that ended up being at 7.5%. And so we see this a lot. People that graduate, they get a good job, they've got some cash flow, they're throwing a lot of that money to try to pay those off fast, which may not be a bad idea, right? It's definitely going to be better than people that refinance it to a 20-year and just pay all that extra interest for that long. But what we're going to do in this scenario is, a lot of times once we get somebody that's had a good job for a couple years, they can refinance that student loan debt, maybe down from 7 to 9% down to 4 to 6%, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've got it, get in that refinance, and then we're just going to pay it on time. And all those extra payments and the extra interest that he was paying, we're going to make that difference in a contribution to his Roth IRA. And then the wife, she actually had federal student loans, and she works at a hospital, which is a nonprofit. And if we were to organize those loans right, we could qualify for a few $1,000s of student loan forgiveness, and we just want to pay that on time. So again, we're going to take that difference and put it into a Roth IRA. So right now, we look at their net worth just in terms of the rate of return. It's at about almost 2.866. Okay, and so I'm going to turn all these things on here besides that one. And what this is just going to show is making those student loan optimizations. And we do this for people a lot. We've really been building out our capabilities for this. And you can kind of see just making that student loan optimization almost bumps their net worth by end of life by $1.5 million. If we look at, let's see, where they would have had these paid off, they're up somewhere about $100,000 in net worth just using the exact same cash flow. And so, I mean, what we want to illustrate to people is we run into people all the time. We like meet people out, or we're at a trade show, or they come in even to talk to us sometimes just because their friend or family member referred us, and they'll say, this all kind of sounds great, but it's too early for me. I'm not retiring for 20 years. Or we'll get somebody else that's like, I'm retired next year, or I'm already retired. It's too late for me. And what we want to show you is with these everyday things that people are just kind of tackling on their own without even really modeling it out, having the experience that we have to do this over and over and over again and learn what's more efficient for people, is that these things have real consequences. And in this scenario, they weren't doing something awful, but it makes $100,000 difference to their net worth over the next, 8 years. And then that compounding, since we put it in a tax-free vehicle, which will be phenomenal for them in retirement, has an outlandish almost effect. Now again, these people aren't going to just build this up like this. Once we get them these savings, they'll probably retire earlier, or maybe they can increase their standard of living, or they'll be able to do other things with those resources. But right now, we're trying to keep it simple so you can just see what the impact of that really is.
Right, and so I want to stress your point. They themselves, their cash flow did not change. They're not spending anymore. They just worked with somebody. They got the right answers, and that alone is what contributed to making this a major change.
So the last thing that we're going to show you on here, because we're trying to really make it to give you examples in real people's lives. So, kind of younger, maybe mid to upper 20s, optimizing those student loans. The second one we're going to show you, we had gone over this a little bit once, but we updated it and made it a little bit more relatable to this scenario, is how you home buy. So the base of this plan is these people are just renting their whole life, okay? And there can be savings in that, especially if you're going to move around or whatever the case.
Right.
But again, that's what we build the base of. And then we said, you know what, let's look at a few different scenarios of how you can buy a house, okay? And I think this is what most people end up doing, is as soon as they're able to, through cash flow with a little bit of savings, to do a down payment. Now I'm going to, again, turn this rate of return up so we're kind of looking at everything kind of apples to apples. They're going to buy a house, that they can afford cash flow wise, that the bank will give them to them. Hopefully they at least come down enough to where they could pay a 15-year, okay? So really, we're talking about living within your means. And then they hold this house for the rest of their life, okay? So then they're going to owe property taxes. We're going to turn off the rent expense. They're going to have a little bit more expenses from keeping the house up. And then this is the actual transaction and all the associated costs. So you can see, from 2.866 million, it's going to jump to 3.081. So again, that actually helps them. But not as much as you would think. You think it would be a lot higher that they paid off that house, but with these extra expenses and it kind of pulled back away from them. And the efficiency that bumped it up was actually taking that rental money, even though the mortgage is a lot higher, and putting it into something they're going to own later. So absolutely, it still helps them, but not near as much as you think it would. Yeah. And this is pretty efficient, okay? Because this is not what most people do. Most people buy a house, and then they live in it for 5 to 15 years, depending on them. Then they move up again, and then at retirement, they say they're going to downsize, but a lot of times the house is even more expensive than it was, even though it might be smaller because they live in a more expensive community where their friends are, let's say. So we actually have that scenario as well, okay? And so that is the buy 3 homes along the way, and finally to their upscale kind of retirement home here. And you can kind of see, oh, let me take inflation back out of this, everything's apples to apples here. You can see that cost them significantly, about $1 million of their net worth to do that home skipping. Okay?
Well, and a lot of that was at the beginning, right? Until you could see all the gray right there. That's where the cost is.
Yep. So they go from, renting to $350,000 to 8 years later a $400,000 to at retirement buying a $550,000 maybe flat condo or ranch style place or what so that's somewhere they want to live. And then we adjusted the property taxes and what so. So really try to model it out to show people. And again, you can use your resources in a non-efficient way, right? If it makes you happy, and some of these optimization things we can do. But a lot of times when people learn this, it changes their behavior.
Right.
And you can come out, significantly different understanding these things. And so the last one we wanted to show you, just kind of looking at the house example, and you don't have to get everything from this. We just want you to get a little bit of an idea of like, what does it mean? And there are areas around most cities in the country to where you could get into a good school district and pay, somewhere of 40 to 60% of the high median costs in cities. It's totally doable in multiple places around Columbus. And if we look at this, if they got in a good school district and got a house that was 160,000, with the associated, upkeep costs and property tax, it increases their net worth by like $1 million, right? And they could be absolutely happy, take more vacations. If we, did the student loan optimization, plus we made awesome decisions house buying here, and we look at that, and even like some of the college planning that we're doing for parents now to help their kids figure out where's the best place to go for return on the investment and getting costs down for that individual kid. They may be able to retire 10 or 15 years early and travel the world, and is that worth it to not have an extra 500 square feet, or be somewhere outside of Dublin instead of right in it to where it's crazy expensive? So again, we like to show these things to people so they can really get an idea of like, this has real practical implications that could change your life significantly. And people a lot of times say, well, I don't have a big 401k that I can roll over, a big investment account for you to manage. I don't need a financial planner. And that's absolutely not true. All these life decisions, from buying a car versus leasing a car, versus renting versus buying a home, how you buy those homes over time, how you finance them, what terms, student loans, not just trying to get them paid off fast. It's generally a good idea, but still, to do it in a way that's optimal, you could end up in crazy different situation. Now, of course, you didn't follow the other paths, so you'll never know, right? But again, what we try to do is telegraph that to you so that you can see it before, and you made an awesome informed decision.
And we came down from a 350 to 160. Even that's great that you can do that, and that would be huge savings, especially if you want to retire early. But even just coming down a few $100s a month,
it's going to make a difference.
It's a huge difference. And this is what people don't understand, how incrementally, just by doing a few things, smaller things, on a monthly basis, you just really change your outcome.
We're showing you kind of the extremes there, right? We want it to be a different, significantly in here so that you can see it. But if you did anything on the continuum, it's going to help you.
Well, and that's what it is for most folks. It's just trying to find out where you could, really get ahead by not making too much of a sacrifice. And usually, doing things like this aren't things that people are going to notice over the long term.
And then from this, we can make all kinds of reports to kind of look at cash flow and where we're going to be positive and negative, and which accounts we're going to take that from most efficiently. We can project future tax. We just started in-house doing tax prep for our clients this year, so we can really tie their planning into here. But we can project all this out for the future so that we can do awesome tax planning, which leads us into next week.
Next week, so big changes in the tax laws, number one, and number two, that we've introduced Rebel Financial Tax Services for next year. So we'll be doing 2018 taxes for the first time. And so next week I'm going to be talking about some of the major changes from the tax code change and how that's going to affect people.
Yep. And so tune in. It's going to be great. We're going to give you a little bit of a preview if you are somewhere near normal on your taxes. So what is going to be the difference between last year and this year, and what can you expect in savings or in extra costs, especially if you're a small business owner. It's kind of a complicated part, but it's something you need to know. If you get 1099 income, you're an LLC or an S corp. It's very important. There's a new thing called QBI, Qualified Business Income Deduction. That was thrown in there, which is a 20% deduction based on your qualified business income. And if you are paid that way, you can really mess that up. You need to plan ahead, not just be filing and then saying, "Oh, I missed it," or what so. So you should be working with your accountant or your planner that is more tax tied in ahead of time the year before, which you've only got less than 2 months now to be figuring that out. So it's going to be important. Tune in. Tony is going to do that. We're going to give you examples just like we did on here. So it's going to be awesome. So thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Hope you're having a great start into fall. You had a happy Halloween, and you're almost ready for some turkey.
And snow. So have a good weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
Shut them down.
We went about 22 minutes.
That's not bad at all. Yeah.
21 minutes and 8 seconds.
You got everything shut off?
Yeah.
Did you start that one?
Yeah. I just
Did you
stopped
start this one? All right, William, you're gonna have to make a list and have it in here. So I want you to set up these things and make sure that they're right, and make sure that you just I gotta do this, and this. All right? Man, we are messing up so much stuff every week. I was gonna tell them to go here too to see our, sign up for stuff. All right, hopefully
I'm gonna take a
the live
picture.
didn't mess up. You can take a Instagram picture.
Yeah,
You know
just
Ryan's
that.
making phone calls
Cheers.
for Dennis?
Are you taking a picture for Instagram? To Instagram?
Want me
Yeah.
to?
I thought that's what you were talking about.
No, I was taking a picture of the setup, so I know how to set it.
Yeah.
So
He's
that,
making phone calls for Dennis.
Dennis Gunworth?
Yeah. Like 700 a week or something.
Making phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
How much is it costing him?
I think it's like 800 a month or something like that.
Just for the phone calls, or for everything that he's doing for him?
I think most of it is the phone calls and stuff. Soliciting business, and he says they're going to get him into a couple places.
And so he said it's worked out good so far.
It's just started, but he says, I asked him how business was. He goes, I think I'm going to be getting in a couple larger accounts because of those calls.
I'm gonna have to talk to him about that. That
Yeah.
sounds like maybe a good thing.
Yeah.
I wonder where they're getting those leads from to call.
Are
Are they digging them up themselves? You
I
think?
asked him, I'm like, well, how much did you have to work with him in training? He goes, well, not much. He goes, I didn't tell him much of anything. So
Ours is a little different though than selling business promotional products.
everybody knows, everybody in business knows the promotional product. So.
But still, I mean,